Hey everyone, welcome to today's stream where we're going to improve so fast people can't believe it. And the key to improving really quickly is enjoying the craft. So today let's lean into the joy of drawing. So grab a piece of paper, your sketchbook, whatever you're working on. If you need something to draw and if you're looking for exercises, check out the free 54 drawing exercises. This video that is linked below. I have a bunch of free worksheets and stuff that you can go check out. This is especially useful if you're like a beginner artist that's like trying to learn some of the craft of drawing. But ultimately, make sure that you're also having fun with these drawing exercises. Never force yourself to draw things that you do not care about, because that's just no bueno. If you're trying to create a sustainable drawing practice, you need to learn how to enjoy it. And this is something I wish people had taught me when I first started drawing. I focus on this a ton now because my younger self thought that you could just like grind through and like become a good artist and then enjoy the craft. And there is some truth to having skill and skill being enjoyable. But ultimately, I don't think skill can overcome burnout. It can't solve your internal emotional issues around the craft. All of those things will come from leaning into the joy of drawing, actually figuring out who you are and like what you want to express in your craft. That's also a big part of why I made the inner artist course, focused heavily on finding out the reason why you make art, right? Like, what is it what are the themes you want to explore? What is the messaging? What kind of personal project do you want to explore? The reason why I made all of that is because I do think that that is something that a lot of artists should be focused on, regardless of how much of a beginner you are, right? So if you are a beginner artist, it doesn't matter. You should still be doing personal projects. If you are in your first 6 months of drawing, then maybe just draw for fun and don't focus so much on building a project. But if you even have some drawing skill, I think like doing mini projects is one of the best ways to improve. So highly recommend it, especially if you are trying to like develop your love for it. Like this idea that improvement is separate from the enjoyment of it, I think is a false idea. I think it's a big lie. It's a lie that I fell for many years. Now it works for some people. I think it works for people who do art for career. If you're doing art as a career, then you probably have a lot more space and time to focus on just improving, and then the enjoyment can be separated out. But if you are someone who does this as a hobby, which those are the people that I focus on mainly, then I think it becomes so much more about just falling in love with the practice and letting the practice fuel the growth. So let me just double check that this is live. Am I live? Yes, I think I am. Hey, how are you today? And have a nice day. Oh, thank you, Hawa. I hope you're drawing. I'm going to be yapping about filling in these colors. The same piece I was working on the last stream. Just filling colors here. I was tempted to figure out a new way of doing colors. I made a video about this recently where I was trying to find a more efficient way to do colors, and I realized that I was just trying to find an easy way out when ultimately I should just be focusing on the love of it, right? So it's a trap that I keep falling into where I'm like, oh, let's get efficient. Let's make better art faster. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. The whole point of this is to find a way to enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it, then why bother, right? Why bother doing this if you can find a way to enjoy it? Now, that doesn't mean that if you're not enjoying it right now that you should just quit. But I do think that you should take it very seriously, that you like need to find a way to fall in love with it and enjoy it. Because that will make all of this so much easier, so much better. Even though I offer like drawing exercises and stuff like that, ultimately I do think that people should be doing their personal projects because that is where the fun is truly found. I think there's a certain level of fulfillment you get from doing a mini project, right? So your project doesn't have to be your dream project. It doesn't have to be the biggest thing that you make. It can literally be just like 2-3 sketchbook pages that you do over like 6-hour period of time, right? It doesn't have to be huge, but I think setting like some intentions around it, I think that there's a lot of fun and growth that can be found there. Now, for some people, they just prefer just doodling about and not setting parameters, and I think that's equally valid. But if you are someone who's investing time into drawing and you like want to improve it to a certain degree, then I do think that that is a good way of doing it. Because these mini personal projects, they create these buckets of exploration, and as you go through, like as you develop one bucket, you can look at it more easily, right? Like you do a tiny little building, and then you get to step back and look at it, and then you can adjust your course from there. Didn't really lean into that bucket analogy there, but I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. I think you find yourself more easily if you dedicate yourself to some sort of small project. I understand the temptation just to like do studies and not really put yourself into it, But I think that just doesn't feel as fulfilling. At least that's been my experience. Like if you guys have a different experience, then let me know. But if you do like just studies for like years and years and years, it feels almost like pointless. Like you might improve a lot. Well, even that I don't know if that's fully true. But even if you do improve and the improvement feels good, I think you lose touch with why you start drawing. I think it's very rare that people just start drawing for the technical skill. And even when people say that, it's like, is that really why? Like you didn't want to use the skill for anything? Like you just want to be good at drawing? And even when people say that, I'm like, I think they want to apply that good craft, that good skill to something. Like it's not just free floating usually. And if it does feel free floating right now, I would recommend introspecting on that. Like sit down, journal about it, and ask yourself hard questions. Like, have you just told yourself that you care about skill because you're scared to dedicate yourself to a project? Like, are you scared to do your dream project? So now you've just convinced yourself that you only care about skill, which I can totally understand that temptation, but I think you should be very, very careful of falling into that trap. Because I kept putting off doing personal projects because I was like, oh, I'm not good enough. So I was trying to do studies, but because I didn't care about the studies, I didn't improve at all. Like genuinely, I think there were like long periods of time where I just didn't get better as an artist. Like, and when I say better, I don't mean just technically. I mean just like in terms of my creativity, my ability to hear the voice of the muse, like those whispers. I think I had lost touch with that, and I think I just wasted time doing tons of studies and not really applying it to anything that I cared about. But I that comes from a place of fear, right? It is scary to do the projects that you care about. It's scary to actually put your dream projects on paper. I understand why people avoid it. I understand why I avoided it when I was younger. Because even to this day, sometimes I feel a little bit like intimidated by the projects I want to do. Like this project I'm working on right now, like the Cuties project. This is a project I care about. I love it. I like a lot of the design elements of it. I am excited, but at the same time, I'm also tremendously scared. Like it feels deeply vulnerable. It feels scary to lean into, like, especially the cute design aesthetic. That is scary to me. Like it's scary to me, this idea that maybe I'll just be doing these cute characters for the rest of my life, and that seems, for some reason, that feels lesser. I feel like I'll get less respect as an artist, but I know that this is an internal story I'm telling myself that isn't grounded in truth, you know? And even if it was the case, I wouldn't get as much approval from drawing cute things, you know? Like if I don't get as much respect from my peers because I don't do realistic figures, even if that's true, it's like, well, are you going to just like not do the thing that you actually want to do just because you don't get the approval that you so badly want? But I do think it's ingrained in us, right, to like want the approval. So I'm going to give myself the forgiveness to, you know, not judge myself too harshly around this, like the desire to want approval. But at the same time, I'm not going to let it consume my projects, right? I'm not going to let it consume my creativity. I think that's where I made a mistake in the past, where I let it, like, even though it existed, I didn't have the gentleness with myself to realize that, like, hey, that's okay that you want those things, but you shouldn't let it take away everything else that you want as well. So if you are someone who's like been hesitating to start your mini projects, then I highly recommend you try it. Just try it, play around. It doesn't have to be something big, right? So like, think of the smallest project you can make that is interesting to you. Think about the things that you are interested in. So if you want to like pull out a sketchbook page right now and just start writing out like what are you actually interested in? What do you want to explore? And it doesn't have to be long term, right? It can be, this week I'm interested in this movie that I watched, and there's like themes in that movie that I want to explore. So you might want to try to capture a feeling that you saw in the movie or something like that. Like it really can be small things at first. It's actually something I recommend a lot, is take a small feeling and build a project around it. I know sometimes it could feel like you should draw something from a big theme. Like you need to pick something huge in your mind and then explore that, and that would be more legitimate than everything else. I understand that temptation. I've had that temptation many times, but I do think that sometimes the smaller things is actually what is a conduit to the larger feelings, right? So like if you imagine someone doing a project around the taste of coffee and the love for coffee, I can imagine a project that has like 1,000 pieces. Well, 1,000 might be a bit much, but like 100 paintings, all of them having to do with coffee, and that feeling very deep, even though I think to many of us, we might consider that like kind of like a obvious theme. Like it's like, well, yeah, people like coffee. That's not that much of a statement. But but I think there's so much within that you can explore that is universal, right? I think it was Rick Rubin. I remember quote. I think it was Rick Rubin. Is that what is it? In the specific, you find the universal. Something like that. I'm butchering the quote, but the overall idea is that something when you just lean into the very personal thing that you think you're interested in, right? So like, I think Calvin and Hobbes is a good example of that, where it's like Calvin and Hobbes is like a very specific, comic. It's like a very these characters are so specific, and the area that the setting of that comic is a specific place, I think in Sweden or somewhere, and it's from the author's perspective, right? Like this area, and that's like so specific. Yet this is a comic that feels very universal because it touches on universal themes. It touches on feelings that I think a lot of us can relate to, but the setting and stuff is very personal and very specific. And I think that's also true for like smaller feelings. Like if you're someone who likes the sound of rain, what does the sound of rain look like on the page? And without just like drawing rain, right? You could, well, I guess you could also just paint rain if that's how you want to approach it. But I think you can take like these more abstract feelings and build a project around it. And I think that makes things a lot more fun than just like trying to do a giga project, right? Like if you're trying to create the next Game of Thrones, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. But if you're like, oh, I'm going to explore this theme that feels personal to me, like, oh, yesterday I saw a beautiful flower, or I had this great conversation with a friend. How do you put some of that stuff, some of those feelings into the art? I think those things are more interesting than just the studies. And you can apply the studies, right? Hello from Argentina. Wow, thank you so much for the compliments. I'm really happy that the way I teach resonates with you. Fundamentally, I built the way I teach around the way I wish I was taught. So I'm really happy when students find that helps them. Obviously, I'm also like open to feedback if you guys have any feedback on the way I teach. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hope you're drawing today. I know Saturday night, I think this is a good day to be drawing. Especially if you do things this is a hobby. I do think that the weekends are probably a little bit easier sometimes to fit it in your schedule. Although, what do you guys experience here? Like, when do you guys find it easier to draw? Like, I mean, obviously that fluctuates, but are there specific days that you find easier to draw on than others? Because my schedule fluctuates quite a bit. So like I don't have a traditional weekend. I work all the time, right? Well, not all the time, but enough where it's like, well, I don't really distinguish by days because I just have so much on my plate. But I know that if you do this as a hobby, then that can be challenging. It might actually help to know which day is like the best day for you, so you don't feel guilty, right? Like if you choose a day that like if you know that the family is just gonna not be in your business on Fridays, it might help to just like schedule all your drawing for Fridays, That is one of the biggest challenges. Like ultimately, there's obviously like a lot of emotional challenges and deeper things within art, but I do think that the big challenge is sitting down and drawing regularly. It's a big advantage with art YouTube is that I think as teachers we have the privilege of providing students with company and encouragement to draw, because I think it can be very hard sometimes if you have a busy life to make time for it. Especially now that there's so many distractions. I almost feel like I use artist live streams and art YouTube as a way to like hijack those distractions and like turn them into good, right? If you know that you have a tendency to go on YouTube, if you follow a bunch of artists who will draw and that encourages you to draw, that's a good way of just almost like turning that like distraction on its head and actually turning it into something productive. And productive not in the sense of like, oh, I need to get better and all that type of productive, but more productive in the sense that you're doing things that you actually want to be doing, that you feel good about, That inclination is funny to me, that like it is so hard to do the thing that you actually would actually make you happy. I know if I sit down and draw for many hours in a day, I know I'm going to go to bed feeling very peaceful. But there are days where I just like get caught up on watching videos that I don't care about and like overeating and just wasting my time. And then I go to bed and I'm like, wow, I just really wasted this whole day. And then the next day I might do the same thing almost, where I'm like, I'll do enough work, but also not really do the things I love and enjoy. I think that's actually part of the modern struggle. Well, I honestly, that is a struggle I think a lot of people face throughout history. but I do think it's gotten worse. I know people say that. I've read a lot of books where people make the claim that like distractions have always been there, but I do think it's getting worse. Like I don't know how you look at the current landscape and don't see that there's a challenge there, and I think that's a big part of why students need to find their love for drawing. Like you need to need to is maybe a strong word. I don't see another way that would be effective against these distractions other than love. And I know that's super cheesy, but that's why I recorded I recently recorded a bunch of lectures on the joy of drawing, and I added it to all my courses, and I added it to the top because I was like, well, if my students are learning how to draw, they need to find the love for it, because I don't see how you're going to stick to this. I don't know how you're going to fight against these algorithms if you don't have enough joy for it to carry you through. And I know like obviously your emotions around your drawing practice is going to fluctuate. Like it's not always going to be fun and games. Like it's going to be challenging at times. But the more you recognize that the joy is important, the more you'll be able to prioritize it and I think make wiser decisions. You can't force the joy. I think a big part of the joy of drawing has to come from like surrender and openness. And that can be challenging, especially if you are someone who's used to trying to control everything. If you are someone who watches a lot of videos on improving your craft and like getting good at drawing, then, you know, there's a temptation to like try to really control it because you're trying to get somewhere. But I do think that a certain amount of surrender is necessary to truly discover parts of yourself and like find the joy in it. Which is hard, right? Because we're taught that like you gotta make the most out of your life and you gotta be gritty and get to a place real fast. You know, like this whole like capitalist mindset where you're like everything has to be charted, everything has to be forward growth, upward growth. And it's like, yeah, well, that's great if you're tracking something that's easier to track, but our artistic growth is not that easy to track. Not at all. Like, that's why I think a lot of artists will end up losing their passion for drawing simply because they're focused on improving the wrong metrics. And I think the metric that is pretty decent for tracking is how much you enjoyed each drawing session, how much you've discovered about yourself, and how many total hours of drawing you do, right? Now, the total amount of hours shouldn't be just like artificially inflated by forcing yourself to draw, but the more you enjoy something, the more you'll draw and you'll just be pulled towards it. And I think figuring that out that's where the game's really played. It's not about coming up with a perfect schedule. It's not about finding the perfect exercise. Like, it's actually one of my frustrations about being a YouTuber, right? Art teacher on YouTube is kind of how I consider myself. But one of my frustrations is that I kind of have to like present things as if it's about improving. Like a lot of the titles and stuff have to be these like clickable titles that I know people will be enticed by, but then I kind of have to explain myself and be like, hey, like guys, find the joy in it. Like try to actually enjoy this thing. It's not, you know, this is about the fun in it. And I think there's a lot of parts of life that are treated in this strange way. I always use your exercises, circles, cubes, and cylinders before I start drawing. It's helped a lot. Yes, awesome. Yeah, learning the basic forms can be really effective for some people. I've had a lot of students have expressed this, right? That's like, I don't know if you've seen the 54 free drawing exercises video, but there's a bunch of different exercises there. And I do get emails from students who are really happy about those exercises. Like they'll pick one that makes sense for them, but yeah, I'm happy that it's effective for you. I wish I had learned that sooner, just like the basic forms. Now that's become very popular online, so it's not as novel of a concept, but it is a concept that I think everyone should just try and explore and then see how it impacts you. I do think that you'll end up going back to shapes. So I think in the end, you're always drawing shapes. But mentally, if you have an understanding of how forms work, you can apply some of those learnings to how you approach your shapes, right? Like if you know how forms work, how you draw your shapes can be informed by that. And I think there's like a freedom that's found in between the two. But if you don't enjoy it, right, like obviously you're saying it helped you, but I know there's also other students who don't experience forms the same way. But I do think that when people struggle with forms in a way where they lose their energy, they lose the flow of drawing because they're so focused on forms, it's because they're putting drawing proper form is above the experience of drawing. And if you find yourself like stressing about drawing the perfect arms or the perfect legs or whatever, like if you're drawing anatomy, or if you're like learning how to draw forms, and you find yourself stressing out too much about drawing them perfectly and you just aren't able to freely draw again in your sketchbook, then I highly recommend taking a break from that kind of learning and just focusing on a personal project, right? Because ultimately that is where the fun is found. And there's so many artists who, when you look at their work, you might at first assume that they like draw using forms and all this other stuff, but really they're just drawing shapes. Like it's just shapes. And I think most art that is interesting to people, at least from what I've seen, it is art that is stylized and isn't realistic. Now, there's obviously some people who really like the atelier way of drawing and all that stuff, but I would not recommend a hobbyist artist try to learn that personally. But I also have a bias towards a little bit more expressive art, a little bit more, less technical, less academic, which I think is pretty obvious based on my own work. And even the way I teach, I think it's much more about self-expression, right? Like, ultimately, I want most of my students to do the inner artist course and just build their own project. And it doesn't have to be a big project, but I do think that sitting down and asking yourself, like, oh, what do I care about? I think you'll like discover things about yourself while making art. And I think that's a great combination. Like, I think I've discovered so much about myself through art. And I think that's where the real, like, that is where the real power is. IMO, you know? But it is harder to talk about because it's hard to convince people, you know? It's almost hard to convince people to value themselves rather than valuing some sort of like outcome. I think the assumption is that like, well, once I get good, then I'll feel good. And that's what I want. Like, I want people to approve of my work, and that desire is completely legitimate. I feel that pull a lot as well, but like, value your own experience a little bit more and see what happens. Like, have you tried that for a week? Have you tried just drawing for yourself for a week and see what happens? It's one of the big advantages. Like, if you're listening to this and you are someone who does art as a hobby, that is a huge advantage you have over people who do it as a career, is that you can just do it for yourself. Like, you don't have to share it. And like, I almost recommend most of my students just stay, like, don't post your stuff online for a while and see what happens, especially if you're a beginner. Right? It just, I think that just puts a weird pressure on the craft to be something that it's not supposed to be. Or it's not that it's not supposed to be shared, but I think it puts a pressure on it that's unnecessary, especially early on. I think develop your love for it, develop your vision for your work that it resonates with you, and then maybe share it, right? It is funny because I made a video a while back about how like students should just stay off social media, and the amount of angry comments I got was wild. It was wild how many people were offended by the idea that they shouldn't just like use it to get approval. I had one comment from someone, they basically said like, then there's no point in making art if they can't like use it to get something. Like the only reason to make art is so that you could one day make money off it. And that is such a depressing thought. It's so like, that's someone who's like really caught up in the game. And I think personally, I think the wrong game. I don't like, if you want to make a career out of it, sure. But I hope that even if you want to make a career out of it, you also value your own experience. Like, I want to make art that impacts people. I do share my art online. You're watching me draw right now. Well, color, draw, you know, if you will. So obviously I can't tell people that it's completely wrong. But at the same time, I hope I am an artist that like focuses on things that I value. And that's why I'm like very intentional about this project. This project is all about love and friendship. Because I'm realizing more and more as I get older that that's ultimately the thing that's fulfilling in life, is the relationships you have. And this is what makes this job fulfilling. The reason why I'm like talking to you guys is because this feels good for me. It feels good to like have students that I connect with, that like send me emails about like, oh, I help them in some way. You know, like Hawa saying like, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Hawa, saying that like, oh, that you like this lesson helped me. Like, that feels really, really good. And it's because it's like that human connection. And it's like, obviously it feels good that your art is improving, but it's also that like, oh, I have an impact on someone's life. That's nice. Like, it feels good. Like, I'm going to go to bed tonight, I'm going to think about that comment and it's going to make me feel good. I'm like, oh yes, I provided value to the world, to a person who, you know, deserves that, deserves to have the resources necessary to learn how to draw better because that's something they're interested in, you know. So it's shocking how many people think that this is about making money. Although I don't blame people for wanting to make money. Obviously, making money is like extremely important for survival. It's not lost on me. Obviously, I'm not rich, but at the same time, don't turn all of your hobbies into just a way to monetize. At least not until you know who you are. Like once you have some clarity about your creative voice, like I do think that maybe if you want to sell the work, go sell the work, but don't let that like consume you. The idea that you should like fit into a mold so that you can one day monetize it, and that's the only way that your time is valuable, right? Like your time is valuable for you and your lived experience. It doesn't always have to be like some sort of like financial output. I think that's a challenge, because I find that temptation myself as well, where I have hobbies outside of art, and there's many times I've been tempted to start monetizing it and using it for attention. Like I dance as a hobby, and I'm very careful not to like start a TikTok and start dancing and stuff, because I'm skeptical of the idea that would make my experience of dancing better. I think it might actually really destroy things, because as soon as you get a little bit of approval, you'll start chasing that approval, and then you start making decisions that you don't notice are unwise. So like write out, like I've actually been writing quite a bit about dance as well, because I'm trying to like make sure I have some clarity about what I care about and like what's worth pursuing. So this piece, so I came up with a coloring process, I think last year or beginning of this year, where I'm basically just like discovering the colors as they happen, it's a lot of fun. It is fun, but it is also sometimes a little bit stressful, because I'm like, oh my god, I have no idea where this is going. But that is the only way for me to like really enjoy colors. Like I've tried a bunch of other coloring processes where you like know where things are headed, and to me, that produces good results, right? Like if you are someone who's doing this professionally, yes, that's probably the best way to like do client work or whatever. But that is just not fun for me. But it also means I deal with the stress of like, I have no idea where this is going. It's a bit of a catch-22. I think all of art is kind of that way, where you're like, as soon as you surrender, there's a bit of nervous energy, because you're like, oh, I wish I was in control. But then you like have to let go of that desire a little bit and be like, okay, like this can't feel like an adventure unless it is free, right? Like you don't get the benefits of an adventurous spirit without also taking the risk of having that adventure, right? I have the same thought about like friendships lately, where I'm thinking about like I have a lot of friends where we kind of just grab dinner and hang out and catch up, and I think there's obviously value in that, but that's also so easy that it's emotionally not really very bonding, if that makes sense. Like if you do something hard together, like I had two of my best friends, they moved recently, and I helped them move, and that was challenging, it was stressful, right? Because moving is stressful, and because I was there with them through that, I felt like we bonded better. Like that was more, to develop the different depth of friendship because we went through that together. And I've been thinking about that as well in art, where it's like, okay, like maybe the big reason why doing a personal project is so effective for growing as an artist is because it's emotionally challenging. Not that you should artificially make it more challenging, but I think naturally exploring your personal voice and asking yourself these more difficult questions can be both exciting but also very scary, because you end up being confronted by things that you might have been trying to ignore, and then you kind of have to be honest with yourself about what you're interested in, rather than like the persona that you might be carrying around because you feel like you need to be something specific. That's not, like I mentioned earlier, like drawing cute characters, to me I still struggle with that, and I just have to accept over and over again that like, oh, I just need to lean into this. I just need to be myself. Like, I might not get the same kind of like respect that someone who draw like real faces can, but that's just who I am. So what am I supposed to do? And that type of surrender is challenging, I think. also why it's tremendously valuable. So, and it's a lesson you keep learning over and over again. I do wonder how many students, when I say improving at art, immediately just go to the technical side, and how many people actually also recognize the personal voice side. Because I didn't when I was a student. So hopefully that's become more and more common, and hopefully hopefully the students will listen to me, understand that's my position. My position is that the real thing that you want to improve is your connection with why you make it, and that I think ultimately that will fuel everything else. Like, you will get the technical improvements, but you might want to sit down and write out, like, okay, what am I trying to do here exactly? Like, what are the small feelings? And they can be small and temporary, but exploring that side of things, I think, is where you get the most juice. And I wonder how different. So, like, I'm a little bit older than I think most of my students. Well, no, that's not true. I actually have a lot of students who are on the older side. But I've been around the art community longer, I think, than many people. And especially like beginners who are like starting new. I do wonder how beginners who are new to drawing, who are exploring YouTube tutorials and stuff, how they perceive improvement. Because I hope it's healthier now than before, but I'm not convinced that that's the case. It would be nice. It would be nice if people new students understood that ultimately it's the love, it's the joy, the personal side of things that will like fuel the growth of the technical side as well. Although I did see a video with this very popular teacher where he was kind of like talking down on modern art and like abstract art, and that made me feel kind of strange, because I'm like, okay, I understand that you have a financial incentive to get people to feel like, oh, learning how to draw like real humans and like, you know, figures and all this stuff, like you have a financial incentive to push that narrative because, you know, that's where you make your money. But to put down like abstract art, I'm like, dude, like how do you not see that there's like value there? Like, that blew my mind a little bit. I was like, what? Like, I understand you're an illustrator and that's the world you live in, but I was shocked by it. But you know, I understand why people sometimes feel frustration around like the modern art collecting, where like people collect pieces of art that just look like almost nothing. But for one, it's like, why are you spending so much time worried about how other people spend their money? That's question number one. And it's also like, yeah, just because it doesn't make sense to you doesn't mean that you shouldn't want it to exist. At least that was my interpretation of what he was saying, and it was very like, I don't know, it was strange. I didn't know how to grapple with that. And part of me wanted to like get in the comments and be like, hey, like, you can have your preference in terms of art style and whatever, and like if you're not into abstract art, sure, but to say that it's less legitimate, I think that's a mistake, like, clearly. And like this division in the art community, I think is unnecessary, because like once you realize it's about self-expression, I think all art becomes legitimate to a certain degree, and then you don't really have to spend any time thinking about like, oh, modern art is stupid and this type of art is stupid. It's like, no, like all art is like fairly legitimate. You know, that's obviously art that you might not resonate with you, and you can be fine with that. You don't have to force yourself to feel like, how do I say this? You don't have to force yourself to like every kind of art, right? That's also not what I'm saying, but like, you don't have to disrespect other forms of art just because it doesn't make sense to you. Although, you know, obviously, like, joking about people having bad taste in music, you know, I think that's just a fun thing that people do, you know. Like, if you do jokingly, obviously that's one thing, but if you're an art teacher that's like talking down other forms of art just because you think the way you work is the best or more impressive, like, it's a bit icky. Because to me, like, I can totally imagine that there's like some grandma right now, as you're listening to this, who's just like doodling patterns and like making abstract art, and that grandma is having a deeper, more personal experience with their art than any person who was like painting a realistic portrait or like doing these things that we, I think, assume is more legitimate, right? Or at least what the art community on YouTube seems to be very focused on. Well, it might just be a reflection of my own ignorance, where I haven't really explored the other sides of YouTube. But I don't see a lot of like art YouTube teachers talking about abstract work. It's usually just like, here's to draw faces, here's to draw heads, here's how to draw figures. And that's great. Like I love that stuff. Obviously I teach that stuff as well, but it's not the only way to make art. You can just draw patterns. Like all of my work is like, so like, yeah, these are plants, but this is just shapes ultimately. Hi Tofu, I love your drawing so much. Your exercise will help me a ton. Oh my god, I'm so happy. Thank you. That makes me so happy. Yeah. I hope you're having fun with them. I think that's I've said this earlier as well. It's just like, as long as you're having fun, like that is the help that ultimately I want to pass on. It feels really good. Thank you. All of these nice messages, they do impact my day a lot. I have a hard time responding to all the comments because it is to sit down and respond to all the comments. It takes like hours and hours, especially because I like sit there and think about it. And I don't do any copy paste. Like I actually want to give the person attention, but at the same time, it's like I can't. If I did that every day, I'm not sure I'd be able to do the actual work. Although I do hope that once I add more stuff to the courses, so like I'm working on a bunch of things for the courses. Like if you have the fundamentals bundle or the absolutely everything bundle that's linked below, I am working on adding more stuff, and I think for the next couple of months, I'm going to be adding more stuff. I also have a friend who is giving me a little bit more feedback on some of the inner artist course, and there's a lot of things that I want to add to the courses. So that's where a lot of my focus is going right now. I do hope that once I am a little bit closer to finishing that up, like especially the things that I have written on my list right now, then I'll have more time to engage with students here on YouTube. So then I'll respond to more comments, but they do impact me a lot. Like I do read them and sit with them, and there's many comments I haven't responded to yet that I just like have screenshotted and are on my phone, so that when I am having a rough day, I can just like read them and I'm like, okay, yes, I am the teacher that I've dreamt of becoming. I am becoming, well, I want to be better, obviously. I want, there's a limitless amount of growth possible here as a teacher. I know that there's many more things I want to get better at. Speaking being one of the main things, right? Like the big part of the reason why I'm doing these streams is just so I can get more natural on camera, learn how to speak fluently. You know, my English isn't necessarily the best, so working on that. So even though I know I have a lot of growth to do, I do feel very fulfilled, and I'm very lucky to have you guys. So thank you. It is hard to express. Like it is hard to express to people like the feeling of like, hey, you being here makes my life fulfilling. Do you understand that? Like, I don't know how to like put that in words without sounding super cheesy, but I guess I'm kind of a cheesy guy. Like I'm literally doing a project on friendship, so like, you know, I don't know if it gets cheesier than that. You know, it's not about what is it? It's not about I totally blanked. What was I trying to say? I was trying to say that there's a phrase. It's about the friendships we made along the way. What does that mean? Wow, this is brutal. My brain is just like quitting on me. It's hilarious to me that I was speaking fluently this whole time, and then as soon as I mentioned that I'm working on my speaking ability, that's when I flub. The gods have a cruel sense of humor. That's when you mess up. But the comments and like the students and stuff, that's really, really fulfilling. Especially because I'm hoping, I do think that I'm fairly confident that talking about the love of drawing, talking about doing drawing exercises, but do them from a place of like enjoyment, I think that's going to save so many students years of headache. Like I genuinely believe that. And I know that I have strong incentive to believe that, but everything I make is basically based on my own personal experience that I had, all the challenges that I face as a student, and also from the feedback I get from students as well. So if you are someone who has my stuff, you have my courses, just feel free to email me any type of feedback. I might not take the feedback if I feel like it's not accurate to what most people experience. Obviously, like sometimes it's just like, I'm not your teacher. Like, and I think that's also hard to convey to students. It's like, I believe these things, but that doesn't mean that I'm the perfect student teacher for everyone, right? So like the teacher I was listening to, who was kind of like, you know, talking down on abstract art, I know that this is a person that provides a lot of value to other students, and that's the right teacher for some other people. But if you are someone who like really values the love of drawing, then I think I'm a good teacher for you ultimately. Like, at least that's how I perceive myself. I could be wrong. That's actually one of the big advantages of putting out stuff for free on YouTube and stuff, is that you get to attract the type of person who likes the things that you talk about. Like, that's what brings me a lot of comfort. Like, my refund rate as an art teacher is like super, super low, simply because everyone who buys my stuff, they've consumed my stuff, so they know what to expect and they know what it means to be to participate in the courses. Hey Tiana, I think your English is brilliant and you express yourself very well. I have your course bundle and really enjoy all the lessons. Thank you so much. Oh my god, that makes me so happy. Thank you. So, that feels tremendously good. Wow, that's a good feeling. Thank you. I'm happy that you find that my English is good enough. It is exciting to improve in it, right? So I like talking. So this is almost the exact same thing I'm talking about the art thing, is that I like talking, I like communicating, I like connecting with people. So just because I like from a place of love, I want to improve it. Does that make sense? Like, because I love it so much, it's like exciting. It feels good to like work on it. And that's kind of what I'm saying with the art as well, is that the more you love it, the more you find reason and fulfillment within it, the more you're just going to want to improve from a place of like not forcing it. And I think that that's the place you want to be in. And it's something that you kind of like, at least in my experience, you kind of have to work on continuously. It's not like you'll get to like some magical place where all the clicks in place. There are almost like, you'll hit points where you're like, I made a huge change. Or like there's certain weeks where you're just like, I figured out this way of working that feels really good to me. That does happen. But I do think that it can be very easy to forget, and then you have to go back and you have to rewrite your expectations out and all that stuff. Like, it is almost a continuous journey. At least that's been my experience. I do want to talk to some more of my peers about this. I wonder how many of them are able to click, like almost like a quote unquote lock in, which is a funny phrase, but like are able to lock in and just stick with the joy. I think that seems unlikely. From everything I've learned about psychology, that seems unlikely. I think it's almost like a continuous journey where you're like constantly like, okay, I need to figure out a new way to like maintain my drawing habit, and like, okay, how do I do this timers? Do I do timers? Do I change the schedule? Like all those things, like they adjust, and your feelings around the art will change. So, right, because like if it was static, it would get boring anyways. Like you almost want the challenge. In hindsight, you want the challenge. I think in the moment, it could be the desire to just like have it be easy can be strong. I find myself in that position a lot where I'm just like, oh, why is it still so hard? Like, why is it so hard to like lean into my own personal voice, like after I've done all this work? And it's like, well, that's kind of the point. The challenge is part of that journey. And the question also becomes like, how quickly would this stuff become boring if you didn't have those challenges? I think that's also a question to ask. It's almost like if you have friends where you have like if you have a friendship or relationship that's like high friction, where you like bicker quite a bit. Sometimes I wonder like, would I enjoy those friendships if they were easier? It's almost like the challenge is part of the fun. So maybe a big part of what makes art fun is the challenge. I agree with what you're saying. I find the intuitive lessons give me the biggest growth. Yeah. Oh my God. That's great. It's great to hear. That is very validating. I love that. Yeah, the intuitive stuff is, I think a big part of the challenge is it is hard to teach. Like it is harder to be like, hey guys, like lean into the love, lean into the joy of it. Like that is sometimes hard to convey. It's hard to convince people to try it, but yeah, I 100% agree. I think some of the intuitive stuff is where the biggest growth can be had, but that's also personality dependent, right? I do think that some people, if you have like more analytical brain, then maybe just like the analytical, like the more design approach, the more technical approach is what works for you, and that's equally legitimate. But I also find like, wow, like just try it out. Just try the intuitive stuff. Like try doing like in some intuitive drawing, right? Just make some scribbles on the page and just see what you can explore, and then like see what happens. Like even if you think you're a more analytical person, just try it, and then and if you do that experiment and decide that that's not for you, that's completely fine. But I do just find that it's so fun to just like discover the art on the page. Like it's mind-blowing to me that I can just draw and like, how do I say this? Like things will just appear that I'm not really in control of. I love that. I love that about drawing. It's one of the best parts. Like it's crazy to me that I can just put down shapes and then within a couple of minutes you can like draw something that looks like something, you know? Like these characters, when I drew them all using inks, it only took like a few minutes to really like sketch it out. Like it's not like the sketching process is like super long. Even if you're planning it out, it's like the results appear fairly quickly, and it's like, okay, within minutes you can have something where you're like, whoa, there's messaging here, there's feelings here, and that just came out of me, and I didn't have to force it. I didn't have to do anything. That's why like learning how to surrender yourself to the craft can be so beneficial. Like just like let go and see what happens. I think that's the surprising part. It's a part that's really not intuitive, is that you can actually just like not try to control it and the art will still appear. Which I think there's a lot of freedom once you realize that, because you're like, oh, I'm not forcing this. Like it's not like doing taxes, you know? I'm not like gritty about it. I don't need to like I just need to hold space for it, I guess. It's almost like conversation with a good friend. That's how I think about it. Like if you're having conversation with a good friend, you are actively in the conversation. And sometimes it involves thinking that's hard, but I think so much of it ends up just feeling like flowy and natural. It just comes out of you. You know, you make jokes that like you didn't really plan, right? Like they'll just come out of your mouth. You'll just say them and it'll make you both laugh. And if I sat you down and tried to make you explain, like, where did that come from? Like, okay, so you made that joke. I understand like why that joke was set up and why it's funny to you guys, but where did that come from? You wouldn't be able to explain it. You'd be like, why? I don't know. It just came and just appeared. And I think a lot of art is the same way. Like I think a lot of people would benefit a ton by recognizing that, like, oh, the art just appears. Like you can just like go a little bit, have fun with it. Even if you're doing a drawing exercise, you can just like almost let go a little bit. And I think that's helpful. I think it's a helpful lesson to learn. It's one that made a big difference for me, at least. I think the part of the struggle is that the desire for control might be one of the biggest challenges. Like the reason why I talk so much about perfectionism, and like if you have my bundle, hopefully you've listened to like the perfectionism stuff on the Inner Artist course where I talk about writing out your expectations. The reason why I talk so much about that is because the need for control is so antithetical to making art. I think it's very hard to be someone who's controlling and also like make art that feels right. You might be able to design things that are great, but I have a hard time believing that you can really express yourself unless you're willing to surrender a little bit. You don't have to surrender completely, right? Like you are in control of the art style that you pursue. You are in control of how much time you spend drawing. You are in control of what project you end up choosing to pursue. But I think you have to kind of like surrender when it comes to the personal voice stuff, because it's just like, what are you going to do? Like try to micromanage your own voice the whole way through? Like that just doesn't work. Which is why I think like the big problem for most people is perfectionism, this desire for control. And I feel that within myself, even outside of art. Like it's not some, like the reason why I talk so much about it is because it's what I struggle with, which is like a pattern in everything I do. It's just like, okay, I understand this because I struggle with it. So like, let me find a solution for myself and then share it. And I'm hoping that in the next couple of months, I'll be adding more stuff about perfectionism to the Inner Artist course. Because I do think that is, because I've seen how much value students get from that kind of stuff. So I want to add more to it and find out the strategies that maybe I haven't explored yet. Because I also need it for myself. I need to learn how to let go and surrender and be okay, you know. Especially with this new project I'm working on, like the Cuties project, which are these cute little characters here. I'm going to add more stuff to the site about this. I have one page on there about like, if you want to support the project, there's a way to like, it's essentially like a Patreon. If you guys know what a Patreon is, it's on the website. It's called the Coyotes Club. Ultimately, that's going to turn into like this larger project where I'm drawing these characters. There's going to be a bunch of them, and all of the pieces will be about these characters interacting and being close to each other, and there's gonna be a lot of these like drawings of characters hugging each other, because like I'm like, that is what I care about. That is, I spend almost all my hours of the, like, I spend so much of my emotional energy focused on my friendships and learning about like being a better friend. And I've spent the last couple of years really focused on that, because I was a hermit for a while and I've struggled with friendships, and I was like, I need to learn how to be a better friend. I need to learn what is it that I want out of friendships. How do I do this in a way that makes sense for me? So all the same questions I was doing about around the art practice, I was also doing about my personal life in terms of like friendships and stuff. And now I'm in a place where I have amazing friendships. So the project's going to be based on that, like that love for people in your life and like found family, you know. Like if you are someone who's had challenging family upbringing, then remember that like you can still find people who are maybe in the same boat as you, and that you can treat each other like family. Like I'm extremely lucky that I have many friends who I consider like genuinely like family. Like my two friends who I helped move, like to me, if they call me right now, there's like very little I wouldn't do for them. Like they're both very sick right now in a way that's maybe a little bit scary, because, well, I'm not going to go into details, but it's like they have like flu-like symptoms and stuff. And I genuinely offered this morning to be like, if you guys are in a really bad place, like I'll come over and take care of you guys, even if that puts me at risk of getting sick. It's like, I don't care. I'll show up. And I was only able to send that message today because I've done all this work around being a better friend. Like, how do you communicate? How do you show people that you'll actually show up, right? Like, so let's say, for example, when I helped my friends move, I lost money by doing that, right? Because I took a day off work and I was exhausted the next day. So basically, like, I lost 2 days of work, and that means I lost a bunch of money. It's like, if I'm thinking about it like a capitalist, you know, if I'm thinking about it from like a productivity perspective, it's like I lost money. But that's not what truly matters, right? Like, what's the point if you're not willing to sacrifice? And do you think that that's an issue nowadays? Although I know it's trendy to complain about how things are different nowadays, even though things like sometimes are just the same. But I find like the individualism is like growing, and I sense it in myself as well. I sense the temptation to just focus on taking care of yourself. And it's like, well, is that the life you want? Like, do you want to be a person who just only took care of themselves through your life? You know, to me that seems boring. It seems sad. It seems sad to like only do that. It seems sad that like if you're like if all of your life and all your friendships are just easy, to me that seems empty. I feel like the story you want to tell at the end of your life is that like I sacrifice for people I care about. I sacrifice to be a good person, basically, like being a good friend. So that is why, like, because I've spent all this time thinking about that is why I'm doing a project around friendship and finding people to care about, like, you know, surrendering yourself. And hopefully my goal is that I hope if I do like, let's say 50-60 illustrations for these guys, that I can maybe put together like a greeting card box, which would make, because that would be a product that makes a lot of sense for this type of project, because it would be like, well, it's about love and expressing gratitude for the people in your life. Then you might as well have a greeting card that has an illustration of these characters, and, you know, so you can use those cards to express your love for your friends. So that's like where my head is headed. That is where I think I'm going to take this project. But at the same time, I also recognize my mind might change. 2 months from now, I might decide that, like, you know what, actually, this isn't what I want to do. It seems unlikely, right? Like, the more experience you develop in terms of the more artistic experience you develop, the easier it is to know which projects you are willing to invest in. But at the same time, I'm fully open to surrendering this project over, like deciding that like maybe this isn't for me. Like, I'm open to that. I'm not going to force myself to do anything that I'm not happy with. So that's really important. It's really important that like you don't, something I say a lot in the inner artist course, where I'm like, oh, like you're allowed to change your mind. Like, just because I'm saying like do your own personal project doesn't mean like you have to finish it. Like, just start it, see where it takes you, and then go from there. Like, you don't need to push through just because you wrote out like intentions for it. You might decide, like, you might write out the intentions, and then you like start the project, and then you'll be like, oh, you know what, actually I don't care about this. I thought I cared about this. I thought I wanted to do a comic book. I thought I wanted to do an illustration on this theme. But then when I started, I was like, actually, I'm not that excited about this. I am excited about this other thing. Let me just switch the project. And that's completely allowed. It's because you're not doing it for anyone else except yourself. You're doing it for your own creative spirit, which means that you don't have to judge yourself for that. You know, that's like the perfectionistic inner critic that wants you to like pick one project and do it perfectly and then get all the praise that would come with it, and like, oh, all the social media likes and all that other stuff. And it's like, no, that's a lie. That's an illusion. How about we put that aside and then maybe figure out a more sustainable path? So I think it's very clear at this point that I'm not fully sure where these colors are going. So one thing I'll point out here is that I have my colors on different layers, like the families of colors in different layers, right? So I'll have like oranges and reds on one layer, like greens and stuff, and sometimes they just end up on different layers, and it's totally fine. But I try to like maintain some separation so that I can go in with hue saturation sliders and just like adjust the colors. And that's what works well for me. That freedom makes colors so much more exciting for me. But what was I going to say? It makes, like I found the way, I found an approach to college that makes sense for me, but that doesn't mean that you have to work that way, right? Like, don't just take someone else's process blindly. What I would recommend is trying it, right? Like, try your favorite artists' processes, right? So like, if you have a favorite artist on on Instagram, whatever, go see if you can find a process video and see how they work, and see if you can like maybe take some of that stuff, because it might resonate with you. But also remember, it's so personal, it's so idiosyncratic. Like the ballpoint pen and watercolor paper that I use, I don't think I would be shocked if I could find another artist who likes working that way, you know? Because it's like, well, that's a very specific pen that feels good in my hand. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to feel good to other people. And I don't see a lot of artists use that pen, right? So it's like, and that's totally fine. That's good. Like, it's good to discover the things that work for you, but you'll only discover it by experimenting. And that's where we get back to this like openness and surrender. Like, you don't find what works for you without just letting go. Exactly like friendships again, where it's like, you don't discover who your good friends are without leaving yourself open and vulnerable to new people. And then you find people, and then you go through that whole process, and all of that can be very, very scary. But that is also the way to discover things, and you don't get the good. You don't get to have all the good that comes out of that without some of the scaries. You just have to put up with the scaries. That's just how it is. Which can feel unfortunate, but I think it's good. So this blue tone, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it blue. I might go a little bit of red. Tend to go red now. The reddish feels too safe. I like the green. The green feels a little risky here. I'm very green inclined, if you will. My furniture is green because I absolutely adore greens. So maybe green. Let's try green. I think can't go wrong with green, at least in my opinion. It is funny to me how like personal voice, like creative voice, can be both surprising but also obvious. Like, to me, every time I've gotten more clarity on what I should be making, it always feels both like, oh yeah, like it'll be like, oh my god, I can't believe it. But at the same time, it's also like, yeah, you know what? Like, it makes a lot of sense for my personality. And I've gotten that feedback from some friends a couple of times where I'm like, when they look at the work and like they point out that it's very close to who I am as a person, the work that I make. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that I like drawing these cute, silly characters and I'm like a silly boy, you know? Maybe that's, you know what? That is actually something that I struggle with, where I'm quite silly in person, but on YouTube as a teacher, I don't know how to like, I don't know how to be silly while talking to students, if that makes sense, because I'm trying to talk about topics that are like more educational. So being silly is like, sometimes it feels kind of off, but that is something I'm working on. I'm working on like, how do I integrate more of that into the videos? Although that's not like a necessity, but it would be fun if I can like add some of that personality to it. Maybe we'll get more of that here, but I don't think it's like, there's no coincidence that I'm silly and I like cute stuff, and I'm not like a very, like, I'm serious about certain things, but I'm not like, if we hung out in person, yes, we'll have serious conversations about certain things, but overall it's going to be about silly vibes. It's going to be about, you know, having fun, just not taking things too seriously, like laughing and giving things silly names, right? Like this project is called Coyotes, right? Which is just a misspelling and a weird pronunciation of cuties. And to me, that's great. Like that feels good for me. So like those things will click, and I think that will click for a lot of students. You don't have to wait till you're an intermediate artist to start discovering some of those things for yourself. Now, what I would be careful about here is the temptation would be to come up with a story about why. Like, oh, I grew up this way, therefore I like this type of art. And those stories might be true, right? It is very likely true that I spent a lot of my childhood in nature, so I draw a lot of nature stuff. Like I don't think that's very likely true. But at the same time, I have to be careful not to lean into that story too much, because if I hold on to that story, that creates a rigid structure around the art practice. And as I said earlier, you kind of have to leave yourself open, and you have to surrender constantly to like keep discovering yourself. So you come with a story and it's an explanation, and you might like write that out one time, but you don't want to clench onto that story so tight that you're not able to discover new things about yourself. Because I used to have stories about the art that I should have made, and I'm trying to think, like, there's a period of time where I kept telling myself I'm supposed to do like spiritual art, but then also like draw real human beings. And I had a whole like internal story about why that was. And that made it really hard for me to discover the fact that I like drawing patterns. I like drawing abstract elements. And I wasn't allowing myself to do that because I had a different story that didn't align with that. But then as soon as I was able to surrender that story, I was able to discover more about myself and the art that I want to make. So it is this constant dance of like, how do you surrender? How do you go back and forth between like, this is what I want. This is what I want. This is what I want. Blah. Wow. He's flubbing all over the place. This is what I want to make right now in this moment. I have a story here that reinforces this, but at the same time, that story can change. Like maybe I go through a phase of life where I'm really into drawing anime characters or faces or figures or plants, cartoony characters. You might go through that phase, and then eventually you might like go maybe change. And I was about to say grow out of it, but I wouldn't say the growing out of it, because that suggests that there's a hierarchy there. But like you might change, you might adjust your taste, and all of that's just going to happen naturally. And leaving room for that to happen, I think, is very, very useful and very important. I do think that culturally we are in a place where desire for control is like higher than it should be. Not should be, that's the wrong word. That is optimal for an artist, for a creative person. And I think for some people, they intuit that. They understand that it's about surrender. Like some of you might be really good at that. You might be listening to this and be like, I don't understand what this person's saying. Like obviously art is about surrender. And if you are in that position, congrats. That's a good position to be in. But I do think that like, the inclination is to lean towards control. The inclination is to try to grasp for something that feels safe. Like the desire for control is just like a desire for safety, right? Like those two things are pretty much aligned. Like a lot of times people who feel the need to grab for control are also the same people who don't feel safe. It's like, oh, I want to control the art practice because I'm scared I'm going to waste time. Like I'm scared that if I don't find the best way to improve, the fastest way to improve, that I'm not going to become the artist that I want to become, and then I won't feel as good about myself, and I'll judge myself, and that makes me feel unsafe. So now I'm just going to spend 20 hours watching tutorials on how to improve instead of just like drawing, you know? And I say that as someone who did that, right? I'm not judging from a pedestal or anything like that. I'm not looking down on anyone. I'm saying that's what I did. I wasted all this time just stressing about improving instead of just like making art. Like, just make your project. And I know I'm saying I understand that's very, very hard. It's not easy. But at the same time, it's like, well, that's ultimately what it's going to be. Like, you're going to get to a place where you just have to make the art, and you have to make it poorly. Like, make ugly art. Even when you, like, if you do my drawing exercises, do them poorly. Do them the worst way possible. Just mess them up completely, but enjoy it. Enjoy it while you do that, and just, that'll give you the freedom necessary to like find yourself creatively. And I believe that quite strongly. I do think that like you have to learn how to make bad art. But again, that might not be true for everyone. It's true for some people, for the people who align with what I'm saying. Like, if there's a part of you that's like, yes, I get where you're coming from, then that's a good sign. That's a good sign that I'm the right teacher for you. But if you're completely like, no, I want to get good at drawing this very specific thing, and I don't believe in surrender, I believe in control. I believe that like I need to control my schedule. I need to draw these specific things. I need to draw 100 figures every single day, and then I'll get like really good at drawing and blah 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 blah. Like, if you're one of those people, then go try that path with a teacher who that leans into that. And then if you burn out eventually, come back, and then we'll talk a little bit about the joy of drawing and why you actually wanted to draw to begin with. Yeah, like you might have seen like a splash image for like a video game, and that's why you decided to become an artist. But I think there's a deeper part of you that's like associates those pieces of art with the love you had for gaming, and that is why you want to draw. That's actually the reason why you want to draw. But you just haven't spent the time to introspect on that. You think it's just about the surface level. You think it's about the art style. You think it's about like an anime aesthetic or a specific aesthetic or whatever, like fantasy art. And you've attached certain connotations to that, and you're not recognizing the emotional thing that you're actually connecting with, right? So like, this is why I think there's so much conversation around art style, right? So there's art style, and to me there's two sections. There's art style and there's personal voice. And when I talk a lot about this in the Inner Artist course, where I talk about like, for me, art style is the aesthetic, right? So like, if you look at this piece of art that I have right here, this is a cartoony style. There are abstract elements. There's flowers. They're like these vines kind of, but I'm using them in like a slightly abstract shaped way. So I can describe this just from its aesthetics. And to me, that's art style. But for me, I think the thing that a lot of people miss out on is that there's also a personal voice aspect to it. And I think that if your art is a cake, the art style might be the frosting, but the actual cake, the main portion of it is the personal voice. And that is, what is it? Like, why am I making this art? I'm making it because, like I said earlier, it's about friendship, right? The cartoony style reflects a deeper aspect of myself. It's the way that would make sense for me. There's probably many aspects of this that I can't explain in terms of personal voice, but there's deeper reasonings. Like, there's themes, there's things about me that are in this. That is so much more important than just the art style. I feel like when people decide that, oh, I'm gonna become a riot artist, or like I'm gonna make anime style art, I think they assume that it's just the art style that they're attached to. But I would argue that there's a personal voice aspect to it, where there's a deeper emotional connection that you have to this aesthetic that you can explore further. You don't have to just leave it at that. You can be like, okay, yes, I want to learn how to draw because I did a lot of gaming and there's splash art that I want to like replicate. Okay, what are my associations? What are my emotional associations with gaming? And you can sit down and you can write that out. And I think that could be a good catalyst for a personal project that would make you grow faster than just focusing on the art style, instead of just focusing on the stuff. Because what you might discover is that the underlying feelings, what you're actually interested in, and the art style that you're forcing upon yourself isn't what mattered to you, right? You might discover that, like, oh, you know what? I like this art style. I do have those emotional connections to it, but I do not work well in that way. I'm actually going to switch to like a more 2D style that isn't like heavy on the whatever 3D elements, or whatever, like whatever it is that's specific to you. But you don't really discover those things unless you introspect and ask those questions of yourself. And that is true even if you're a beginner artist. I think that is, I think the lie that I kept telling myself is that I need to get better before I could do those things, but I don't think you have to wait. I think waiting can be a mistake. Unless you're like in your first couple of months of drawing. Like if you're in your first couple of months of drawing, you might just want to like explore the medium and just learn how to draw regularly. Like, cause that is a hard part. Like that, I admire you guys if you're drawing right now. That deserves praise. Like that deserves so much praise. Like all the art that you see online from hobbyists, like that deserves so much praise because it is so hard to make time for it. Right? Like it is so hard. I have other art friends who are part of this mentorship that I participated in, and there are people in that group who work full time, come home, draw, and they're like, you know, exhausted from work, but they still like put in the time to like explore their personal voice. They're like trying to make art from a loving place, and to me that is so hard to do. Just like the scheduling of it is so hard. In my opinion, that's one of the harder parts of things, because that's just like a life thing, right? Like how do you actually make time for things amongst everything else? That's why sometimes I actually admire hobbyist artists a little bit more than professionals, because I'm just like, well, the professionals, they have a strong financial incentive, but the people who do it as a hobby, like they're doing it just like out of love for it and just making time for it, even though there's like, you know, the incentives are a little bit different. But then again, like the hobbyists have the advantage of like being able to do it from a place of love and just putting away some of those like pressures. So, you know, pros and cons. But because I was tempted to teach specifically people how to make money off their art, like there was a temptation to do that, but I realized the impact and connection I want to have is with beginner artists, like those beginner intermediate artists who are like doing it out of just like out of a need to be creative, right? Like people who are creative, if you're watching this and you're drawing along, you know this is who you, this part of who you are. Like you're not gonna get away from this. Unfortunately, you're stuck like this. You're always going to be creative. You're almost always going to have a desire to create things. Now the medium might change over time and like how you do it will change, but that inner desire, I don't think ever changes. I think you're stuck like that. And at least that's been my experience. And I hear a lot of students email me. Like I've had at least 10 or 20 emails now from people who are, you know, grandparent aged, like, you know, they're like later stages of life. They stopped drawing when they were younger, or like, you know, when life got busy, and now they're getting back to it, and they express some sadness in having left, because they're like, oh, there's this deeper creative voice that I like lost touch with, and now I'm getting back to it. And like those messages are beautiful. Like it's beautiful that they finally got back to it, because it's like, I know what that feels like. I know what it's like to like feel disconnected from that deeper part of yourself. It's not a good feeling, and it's not a feeling that I think, it's not a feeling that's necessary. You can actually just like try to make art a higher priority in your life and make it clear to the people in your life. Like, I think this is really important. Like if you are a creative person, you have to make it clear to people in your life that you're like, this is oxygen to me. Like I need to make stuff, and I need you to help me make more stuff. Like if you tell your friends that, and you have good friends, Rob, like that's another tricky conversation. If you have good friends, just tell them that so that they can help you along. Now that doesn't work for everyone. Like if accountability and external pressure doesn't work well for you, do not do that. Like that's the worst thing you can do if you're in that position. Like if you're sensitive to feedback in that way, then don't invite people in, right? But if you have people in your life that you trust in that way, I highly recommend telling people that, like, I need this. And when I'm doing poorly, like if you notice that I'm like a cranky person, I want you to ask me, like, when was the last time you made a piece? Like, when was the last time you did a drawing? Go do drawing exercise for 10 minutes and then let's hang out again. Like it's like, and the reason why I'm saying this is because a lot of artists I've talked to agree with this, feel this exact way, and I see this in myself where I'm like, oh, if I'm having a rough week, it's probably because I haven't held a pen, a very specific type of pen. Where's it? If I haven't held one of these pens in like a week, I'll be a grumpy boy. I'll be a very grumpy boy because I need my pen. I need the experience of that pen on paper. And that might sound slightly unhealthy, that's a necessity, but it's just like, well, if you're a creative person, that's just going to happen. It's just in you. It exists in you. I think it's beautiful. I think there's many benefits to being a creative person. I think that sensitivities that creative people have is a huge advantage. I think it makes you a way better friend. I think it makes you a better communicator. Like, so many creative types I meet, even if they don't communicate well in words, their ability to like connect is so great, especially because they have like this deep empathy. Because I think that like creative impulse comes from that exact same like empathy. Now it also makes life maybe a little bit challenging because you are more sensitive. At least on average, that's what I've seen. But that will make life more fulfilling. It'll make it more challenging in some ways, but I think it's completely worth it. I can't imagine living life without that. I've been really into like orange and greens. So I've been thinking a lot about home decor because I'm applying to move to a new place, to a new unit. My current place is all green, and I was like, when I initially did my inspiration boards for the aesthetic of this place, I was meaning to do oranges. I have a couple of like orange flower pots and stuff like that, so there are orange accents in this place, but it's not as warm as I want it to be. So I'm really hoping in the next place I go to, I can lean heavily into the oranges and warms. Like, I want to live in a warmer place now. Warmer place in terms of visuals, not warmer place in terms of, temperature. But so that's maybe why a lot of these oranges are showing up in this piece. Oh man, it is so, I don't understand when people are able to like choose colors quickly, because I think I like so many different colors. I'm always like, oh, that's nice, and like that color's nice, and I'm like, how do I choose one? Paradox of choice, too many options. Yeah, this is actually coming together beautifully, which is hard to say about your own art, like genuinely. But this is the fun thing, is like once you learn how to surrender, it's much easier to like give yourself credit, because you don't feel like you're giving yourselfness credit, if that makes sense. Like, the more you feel like the art is coming externally from some other place, it's so much easier to be like, oh, it's so much easier to be like, oh, that's beautiful because it came from outside of me, right? So like when I'm surrendering these colors and I'm like letting the process just happen, I feel like the muse guided me here. I didn't do this. It wasn't me. I was just a conduit for this creative juice that was flowing, And I felt that way consistently throughout my art practice. So would recommend it. The temptation to increase saturation is one I struggle with quite a bit. I oversaturate things. Like, there's very often where I have to go back and like desaturate things because I go too far. So I'm trying not to push them too far. But I'm using a couple of sliders here. Yeah, like those oranges are, you know what? I'm getting finicky. Maybe I should get back to the actual drawing here in a second. Yeah, no, now I'm just wasting time. Here, let's go in. Let's do a couple of detailed lines here. This is one of the more fun aspects of working digitally, at least for me, is that I can just zoom in here and do these small details. So I can draw these patterns everywhere. Like, I can draw these patterns that are a little bit more subtle than the black lines. So you can go in here. I like a good schnoz, right? I like a good nose. If you've done my courses, you've probably heard me say that before. I said that quite a bit in the intro to drawing course, which like I have to rename some of these courses. Like, I need to. I was actually working on that today, where I was looking at all the stuff I offer and figuring out like, how do I make some of this stuff better? Like, what can I add? What do students actually want? And I'm realizing that some of the naming I need to like adjust a little bit, not change completely, but make things a little more obvious. But in the intro to drawing, I talk a lot about loving a good schnoz. Probably because I have a big schnoz myself, so they're fun to draw. when I was designing these characters, I was like, they need to have noses. They can live without a mouth, but they can't live without a nose, because we like drawing a good nose. And this is like a small silly preference, and then ultimately that impacts my art style. But that's like, you know, is there a deeper meaning behind that? Like maybe not. Like maybe that isn't something I could like write out, but there's an inclination there. Like in exploration, I've found that sometimes I like drawing characters without mouths, and part of me thinks that it makes the character look like they don't speak or eat, and to a certain degree that makes it feel a little bit more spiritual. At least that's the way I'm justifying it, but it could just be an aesthetic preference, right? So yet again, there's like there's a desire to make up stories about your art practice and like why you do it the way you do it, and that's fun, and obviously like I'll explore it. I do think that that's a good thing to explore, but at the same time, don't get too caught up in it. Ultimately, come back to the drawing table and just draw and see what happens, and see how the stories change and adjust over time. I do wish I had a different camera setup for streaming. I do need to like look into that. This is like my second stream on here in many. Well, I've done streams in the past, but this is like in recent history. This is my second one. Well, I guess the image is clear here, but at the same time, I like seeing people's hands. But you know, you guys get to see my hands in the videos, so that's a trade-off. On streams, it's just the iPad screen. You get to see the results, and then videos get to see the inking. Although I'm not sure I could be, like I can talk and do colors, but I'm not sure I could ink and talk at the same time. It was one of the biggest learning curves when I was doing the fundamentals bundle, like the lessons for that, was teaching while moving your hand. Like that's a skill in itself. Like that's a skill that needs to be practiced. I was like, oh yes, this is something I need to work on. Because like if you haven't seen like all the fundamentals bundle and the intro to drawing stuff, that stuff is real-time videos where I like go through it, because I find that that's one of the more effective ways to do it. And then you also get worksheets so you can work along with me. And the whole reason for that setup, like that design, is because I had to ask myself the question, like, how do you get people to actually draw? Like it is like you can sell that information product, but you want ultimately people to actually sit down and draw, and like how do you encourage that? And that's why the worksheets are there. Same thing for like the 54 drawing exercises. The reason why I give out some of those lessons for free is so the students can like try it out. Like if you are someone who's on the edge, like on the fence of whether or not to buy some of my courses, go use the free stuff. Like go to the 54 free drawing exercises, the link below, and then try it out and see if that way of learning works for you. Now there's two components to the stuff that I put out there. There's like the creative side, which is like the inner artist course, the mindful drawing course. And then there's like the fundamentals bundle, which has like all the figure drawing, portrait drawing, and then I'm also going to work on poses and all this other stuff. Like there's a bunch of stuff that will be coming. That's like more on the technical side. So those are two aspects that you like can explore if you're interested. Because you want to do both, right? Like I rail against the technical side quite a bit, but I keep reminding people like, oh, do your own personal projects. And the reason why I do it is because it's not as hard to convince people to do the drawing exercises. Like I think people understand intuitively, like, oh yes, doing these drawing exercises is good for me. I can see why this would improve my art. But the personal project stuff, I think it's scarier. That's why I talk so much more about that than the technical side. It's not because I don't think that you should be doing drawing exercises, right? Like it'd be such a hypocrite if I was selling a product that helped people with that while also not believing that it helps. Like obviously it helps, but I think they should serve each other. Like they should, two friends holding hands, right? Like that's what that should be, at least in my perspective. it would be interesting if there was a study on how doing personal art impacts people. Like I have a friend that insists that I should become a art therapist, where like, you know, you use art as a conduit to grapple with challenging feelings. And there's a part of me that wants to explore that, but at the same time I'm like, I don't not want to go back to school. School isn't for me. I like self-teaching. That's the reason why. That's the reason why I'm a teacher online. It's because I believe in self-teaching. But yeah, it's something to consider. Good evening, Christine. Hello, how are you? Question about your Procreate brush for coloring. Did you make it yourself? No. So the coloring brush that I'm using, if you go into the drawing section, there's a gloaming brush. A pencil, whatever. I don't know what gloaming is supposed to be. Like, is it supposed to be a crayon or something? So I took that and then I adjusted some of the functionality on it. So I have a couple of different gloaming ones where I just like, I made small adjustments and you don't need to worry about those specific adjustments. Ultimately, it's just a gloaming brush. Calling it a gloaming brush sounds weird because I assume it's supposed to be like a crayon. Anyways, yeah, it's a gloaming one. So most of my brushes are some of like the standard ones that are inside Procreate. I've just learned how to adjust them. So what I would recommend that you do is go in to the settings, play around with the settings and see what works for you. One thing that you can remember to do is duplicate the brush. So you can just go here and duplicate. Is that showing up? Hopefully that's showing up on the screen. But there's like a duplicate option. If you just swipe to the right, you can duplicate the brush and then you can play around. So you can just like make a bunch of duplicates, play around with the settings and see what works for you. There's a lot of fun to be had by doing that. But also remember that like there's no magical trick. A lot of times the brushes are fun to play with, but also remember to draw, right? And the reason why I mentioned that is I've seen there's so many artists online who've made insane amounts of money just selling brushes. But to me, I feel like some of the marketing is a bit of a lie, because they'll have like these beautifully painted portraits and they sell a brush pack that is that. And they'll advertise it on like Facebook ads and stuff. And people will buy it thinking that like, well, the brush is going to make me draw like that. And it's like, no, like those are just like very standard brushes. Like the brushes aren't even that special. The reason why that artist is able to do that kind of work is because they have skill with that, right? Like they could actually have way worse different brushes and still do very similar art. So don't fall into the trap of believing that brushes matter that much. They matter. I do think they help, but ultimately the goal is to find brushes that work for you personally, that you like making, like working with. I think you get more of that by you get closer to what works for you by just exploring it yourself than buying other people's brushes. At least that's been my experience. But also, you know, buy brushes if you're so inclined. But remember, don't be easily fooled by the marketing around it. I think it's tempting to believe that the brush is going to magically make you better. It doesn't work that way. I like how it changes color slightly when you start a new stroke. Such a cool effect. Yes. So if you go into the settings, you're going to go into one of these. Yeah, I think gloaming. Yeah, if I go into the settings here, is this showing up on the screen? Yeah, it's showing up on the screen. Okay. If you go color dynamics, there's different like it's called. I think it's a stroke color jitter. It's like these settings you can go into and you can adjust them. So just play around with it. It's the hue slider on that you can play around with. So I don't remember exactly how to do that right now, so I'm not going to try it. But yeah, you can just do that yourself. It's not something you have to spend money on. It's actually one of the good things about Procreate. I think it's a big part of why Procreate is so popular. It's because they gave you a bunch of brushes that are great. Hey, I don't typically draw, but your tutorials are chill and help me to relax. Keep up the good work and try some Gabagool, pro artist from oh my god. Thank you, Tony Soprano. Is that your actual name? I assume that's... Part of me assumes that that's not your real name, but yeah, maybe that's your real name. That's a good name to have. Thank you so much. That it makes me so happy to hear. I was saying this earlier. It's super fulfilling as a teacher to hear that people are using tutorials and stuff. It really does sit with me. It hits me pretty hard. So thank you. Thank you for using it. Thank you for letting me be part of your creative journey. I say that so often that but it means so much to me, and I don't know how to like really express that to students, that like it does mean the world to me that people are inviting me into their creative lives. And you might be thinking like, well, I'm just relaxing and drawing. It's like, but to me, it's not just relaxing and drawing. It's like, no, it's so much more meaningful than that. Like the opportunity to have this connection with people, I think, is tremendously valuable. And yeah, it means a ton. So thank you so much for the comment. It does mean a lot. Not my real name. I just like Sopranos. Yeah, okay. That's what I figured. But as I was saying, I was like, maybe it's a little bit rude to suggest something. Like if it was your name and I was saying that it's probably not your real name, that's also kind of, maybe not the nicest thing to hear. But yes, that's what I assumed. Okay. Now I feel a little relaxed, because at first I was like, oof, Jay, slow down here a little bit. Give the man a chance to explain if that's his name or not. Yeah. I'm jumping around quite a bit too when I do colors, which is probably ineffective, right? Like, this is something I talked about in the last video, is that like sometimes the desire for efficiency is actually like a curse. Like don't try to be efficient. Be as inefficient as possible, but enjoy it. Unless the efficiency makes it more enjoyable for you, right? So sometimes I think there's a temptation to try to find a way to make art faster, and you see that all the time. Like that's the most clickbait video that you can write, right? It's like how to draw faster in 2 steps or whatever, and I've done those videos. But in those videos I make sure that I'm like, yeah, it's like the way to draw fast is to enjoy the way you draw. And if the way you enjoy drawing isn't efficient, then stick to the inefficient way, right? Like I make art in the most inefficient ways, and I'm happy with that. I think that's good. I think it's good to be a little bit inefficient. Artist crayon. Okay, let's. Part of me is also like debating how much like details to put in. That's also something I'm grappling with. Like how much do I focus on texture versus like those like detailed lines. I like drawing details, but at the same time I'm like, is this like an insecurity thing? Like should I, And the only way to find out is like, I think approach each piece. Especially for this project, I find myself tempted to like be more efficient. Like, no, slow down, Jay. Like, we don't have to finish this. Like, it doesn't have to be fast. It can be slow. The end game is just more art. Like that is the thing I have to keep reminding myself of. After I finish this piece, I'm just gonna make another one. There is no ultimate done thing, right? Like you're just gonna keep coming back. You do one drawing exercise, then you do another one, and then you do a personal project, and then you do another personal project, and you're gonna keep doing that until the end of time. And that's, I think that is what I have to keep saying to myself. Like, okay, yes, slow down. Just make the art. Make each thing. Give it the love it deserves. Give it the love and time that it deserves, and then. Which is why I think it's helpful to think of your art practice as a friend, because like, you wouldn't rush your friend through their sentences. I assume you wouldn't, because you're friends with someone, you like hearing them talk, so you're gonna like sit there, you're gonna be like, okay, yes. Say more, please, thank you. Like more of this. And I think the art practice deserves that kind of love and care and attention. Here we go. I also have to do the shadows here at some point. For the shadows, I just use like a purple multiply layer, which is a pretty common way of doing shadows. But here, yeah, that's like the deeper orange or red there. Maybe. Let's see if I can deepen that a little bit. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, a little bit more on the red side. That makes it pop quite a bit, but then it's also like, does that make it look like lava? Yeah, I like that. There's something that was off about the colors. I think that like fixes it a little bit more. Now it feels alive. There we go. Every time I do colors, this is exactly what happens every single time. Something feels off, and then I just have to keep trusting the process. I have to keep going forward, and then at some point it clicks, and you're like, ah, there we go. That is what we're searching for, this moment. Now this feels good. Like before I get to this point, I'm always a little bit nervous because I'm like, ugh, like what if the colors don't come together? But they did. So let's do this purple tone. I'm going to just put that on a multiply layer. I'm going to use my gloaming brush, my favorite brush. Multiply. I'm going to put the opacity maybe 60%, and then we're going to just go in and add shadows. And this adds depth to the piece, but I also want to be careful about not making it look too dark. I think tones, I just want to like darken certain areas. So I might like add a little bit here. By the way, if you guys have any questions or like things that you guys have been grappling with that I could touch on a video, feel free to leave them in the comments. As long as it's not like something like technical skills, a lot of the technical like drawing tutorials, that's just going to be inside the courses, because it's more the mindset stuff that I want to talk about. Like obviously like the technical stuff is important, like I've mentioned, but I'm probably not going to do anatomy tutorials anytime soon. At least on the free side. I'm just gonna leave that in the courses, because to me, like, that's interesting and valuable, but that's not what I want to talk about. But if there are things that you guys struggle with, just let me know. I always like hearing back from students. It's actually one of the best parts about being online, is like, as a teacher, I get to have my finger on the pulse on what my students need, and it's a huge benefit, right? Because then I can just like provide the lessons that people are looking for. Yeah, so see how this purple tone might be hard to see on the screen on like a computer or whatever, but this purple really does, the multiply layer with the purple really helps like make things pop, adds the depth necessary. Because when you add colors to these inks, sometimes it feels like it flattens it a little bit, and then when you add the shadows, it really like does add a new dimension to it. Like the colors make so much more sense once you have a little bit of shadow tones. At least in the way that I work. I'm not saying that everyone has to work that way. I think there's a certain beauty too without like the shadows, because the shadow has like a very specific aesthetic. It almost reminds me of like retro anime look, where you have like those cell shaded purple tones, very common. Like that aesthetic kind of has a lot of those like purpley shadows. But it works well with the way I do my inks. Like it does bring in new dimension. And that took me a really long time to learn. Like I really struggle with colors. I've been an artist for 12 years, and I didn't find this way of working with colors until last year. It was last year, November, I think. That is a long time before figuring out that. So like if you are an artist that's been making art for a while, or if you're a beginner and you feel a lot of pressure to figure it all out right now, it's like, take a breather. Give yourself room. You don't have to figure it all out at once. There's plenty of room to discover more, and you don't have to have it figured out at all. I love this section. Okay, can we just take a moment and appreciate how these colors came together? I don't know if this is showing up the same. Like, this is the only part. One of the challenges with streaming, I'm looking back there because my computer's there, the streaming, is that like I can't tell how this looks on your computer, but these colors right here in this spot, they just came together perfectly, and that was completely like by accident, right? I didn't plan any of that, but I love this. This feels so good. That is, God, colors are great. Colors are so, that is satisfying. That's a good feeling. So I'm just gonna take this moment to be like, okay, I just noticed something good in my own art, and the only reason why I've been able to notice good things in my art is because I've written out my expectations. I've actively tried to rewire my brain to like recognize when good things are happening. I do this within the art, and I also do this in my life in general, where If something good happens, I'm going to try to savor it. I'm going to sit. I'm going to write about it. Like if I go hang out with my friends and I have a good experience, I'm going to keep trying to think about it. I'm going to keep like, let that marinate in my mind that good things are happening. And I do the same thing with my art. So right now, I just had a split moment of like, that color feels good, right? That's what happened right now. This just happened where I'm like, I just noticed this. So instead of just like moving forwards and just like being like, okay, I felt good, but let me just finish the piece, I'm going to take a moment and slow down. I'm going to decide to like savor this good feeling and appreciate the fact that I made this art, right? So the reason why I'm saying this is that if you're going through my drawing exercises, for example, like a lot of you guys have commented about the drawing exercises. If you're going through it and you do a good drawing, that feels good, like it feels good in your body. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's perfect, but you feel good about having done it, then just take a breather, enjoy the feeling, and lean into the joy of it. Because I think like reinforcing when good things happens can rewire your brain to make you learn better. It can make learning better shouldn't be the only thing, but like you deserve to feel the joy of that, and that will make everything better. Like there's no part of the art experience that doesn't get better if you lean into the joy of it. So you're gonna have a lot of challenges that feel natural. Like you're gonna have moments where you feel like, oh, my art isn't good enough, and that's gonna be challenging. And those things we tend to savor the negative feelings, but we don't savor the good feelings the same way. So what I'm recommending is that you just take a moment, savor the good feelings when they come up, and turn that into a habit, right? So this is something I added a section to most of the courses. They call it Joy of Drawing, and I call this a beautiful pause, where if something beautiful happens, just pause with it, sit with it, because that is the temptation is just to keep running forward. It's like, no, you miss out on so much if you don't learn how to like savor it and sit with it and enjoy it. Especially because the human mind is wired for survival, right? Like your brain is wired for survival. Therefore, you're way more inclined to focus on the negatives than the positives. So you actually have to actively create the habits around savoring the positives. 10 on 10 would recommend. My life has gotten so much better now that I focus on that. I'm not great at it. I'm still working on it quite a bit, but there is a reason why I added that to the Joy of Drawing and why that's in all the courses, right? I'm like, these are the meta skills that will make all the other things easier, right? Like, yes, you want to learn how to draw figures and faces and all this stuff. That's great. But also learn how to like savor a good drawing when it happens. How do you sit with it? Really just enjoy it. Meditate on it. Go for a walk and just like feel good in your body about the drawing that you did. And that will make it way more likely that you come back to the drawing table next, and then the entire drawing habit becomes easier. And the less emotional energy you spend on getting yourself to the drawing table, the more emotional room you have for exploring your creativity. And that's ultimately where we want to get to. We want to be in a place where we get to explore that stuff quite easily. I literally used to always use gray or darker shade of the color I was using as shadows, and once I used complementary colors for shadows, a whole new world of color opened up. Yeah, that sounds amazing. Complementary colors and shadows. So how do you work? Do you work kind of like in a painterly style, or do you work like line work, then adding colors? Like, tell me a little bit more about like the way you work, because that's interesting. Complementary colors or shadows, a whole new. Yeah, that sounds fun. Like when something clicks in that way, where you're like, oh my god, I just learned a new thing. That's so satisfying. That is, yeah. I can imagine that must have been a good feeling. Those are the moments that like really highlight all the work, right? Like, and the exploration, right? Like you wouldn't have discovered this. What I was saying earlier is that like you wouldn't have discovered this thing without leaving yourself open to trying new things, and like the openness to surrender to a new process. Like you don't get those benefits without trying new things. Adding a couple purple tones here and there. Yeah, so like now the depth of color is really coming out here. Thank God, because I was really starting to doubt myself there for a moment. I was like, why does these colors feel so flat? At first I thought maybe it's because I wasn't paying enough attention, and I was like yapping about too much, but no, it's just that those reds needed to come in and the shadows. Now it's really, now it's looking like something. Now we're headed somewhere finally. There we go. I am excited about these pieces. I'm excited for this project. One challenge that I do experience quite a bit is the finances of things, right? Like financially, sometimes I stress out about like, okay, I'm spending all this time building this project. Like, will I actually be able to survive? And then I have to remind myself, like, yeah, like there's always other ways to make money. Ultimately, the art should serve itself. And that's a unique problem that I don't really talk about much in my courses, simply because I focus on teaching people who do this as a hobby. Like, I assume most of you guys are hobbyists. And there's a reason for that. Like, I appreciate people who do this as a hobby. I do think that there's a huge advantage there to just like do it for the love of it. But that also means that I don't talk about some of the challenges I'm going through. The challenge I'm dealing with is like not putting financial pressure on the drawings. Like, don't focus too much on how you're going to market the thing, how you're going to make money off it, like what are the products. Like, I'm excited to make products because ultimately I do think that I want to have an emotional impact with my work, which I think is completely fine. I think it's completely fine to like want that, but don't let it consume the practice, right? So I'm trying to remind myself of that right now and here now. I'm just like, okay, yes, it's good that you want to do these things, but also be careful. Don't let it become the main thing. The main thing is always the practice. Are you drawing? Like, if I do a face and finish line work, I lay down a wash of watercolor. Oh, as a base color and a layer colored pencil on top. Then the face is blue, I'll use oranges for shadows. Beautiful. Oh, I love that. That sounds so fun. Wash of watercolor and pencil on top. Those textures probably turn out great for you. I can imagine that the textures feel great. Oh, that sounds beautiful. I'm a big fan of like good texture. There's a reason why I work on watercolor paper, right? Like I ink on watercolor paper, which kills the pens I use quite quickly. I go through a lot of pens. I have at least 100 of those pens at home. But it's cause I like that feeling of texture. Like, although I assume you're working digitally. But I mean, like visually, like even this, like you can see that this brush I use is so textured, and it's because I want that like traditional feeling in the colors. Hello, 12:53 p.m. here. Greetings from Argentina. You really helped me to return to drawing. Oh my God, thank you so much, Elio. Thank you. That means a lot. Like I was saying this earlier. I don't know if you heard or if you were here earlier, but it is very, very fulfilling when students find my work, my teaching useful, and it brings them back to the practice, because that is all I want. Like, it's the number one thing I want in life, is being a teacher who helps beginners find their joy for drawing and like return to it if they like took a break, because that is so meaningful. I know that, like, I bet you are creative at heart, right? Like, I bet that there's a part of your soul that just needs to make stuff, and like drawing is fulfilling. Like, it makes you feel like your life has more meaning. Like, I know that sounds dramatic. Like, I know that for some people they're like, well, I'm just drawing for fun. Like, it doesn't have to be that serious. But I genuinely believe that exploring your creative voice and just like learning how to draw can be so meaningful. So I'm honored to be part of that journey. Hey, Faisal, am I saying that right? Hello, watching from Bangladesh. We love Bangladesh. That's awesome. Yeah, it's always nice to have people watching from different parts of the world. It is the beautiful part of the internet, right? It's like that, being able to connect to anyone, which is a huge benefit, like especially if you're a creative person, because you probably aren't around a lot of people who are like you. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like there are creatives everywhere, but sometimes the specific thing that you're interested in, you don't have people in your life who are interested in that. So it's nice to be able to go online and like have people who are interested in that. Like, I love the fact that I can go on YouTube and search anything, or I can watch videos by artists who are have a very similar like mindset, or like have friends online who have similar mindset. So I don't feel so alone, and I don't have to put the pressure of the people in my life to like carry that baton, right? Like, they can be themselves and not understand these things, and it's totally fine, because I have that outlet somewhere else in my life. And it's a huge part of what makes the internet great. It's why I decided to become an online teacher instead of an in-person teacher, because I was like, I want to be able to connect with people in other parts of the world who are like me, right? Like creatives who are like me, who have that spirit in them. I want to connect with those people regardless of where they're born. And it's one of the upsides of YouTube being worldwide now, and Android phones being the most sold phones in poor countries, right? Like that gives a little bit of benefit because then they come with the YouTube app. So there's part of me that hopes that more artists get the resources that they need, and the more artists find the right teacher for them, right? So I think a lot of you who are here right now, I'm the right teacher for you. Like that's why you're hanging out. Like you watch my videos and you watch what I'm saying and you're like, yeah, I get this makes sense to me, and that's why I'm here. Like, but that doesn't mean that's true for everyone, right? For some people, a different teacher would make sense. And I think that's a great thing. I think it's a great thing that we have teachers that are focusing on different things. Not every teacher should, not everyone should be learning from the same teachers. That's when I get nervous, that when I see like teachers who like get tons and tons of views, there's parts of me that are like, oh my God, like I hope the people that are watching this are thinking about this critically and aren't just blindly following this most popular person. It's one of the scary things about fame in the art education, or in education in general, like any part of education. If someone becomes really, really famous, it's like, well, that's a lot of influence and power over students, and that could easily be, used in ways that are not good for the space overall. But hopefully, people are watching those things critically. Which, like, obviously, I probably shouldn't be saying that out loud. Like if I was smarter about marketing, I wouldn't admit that some people don't suit my education, but like my stuff. But I want people to be critical in that way, because I don't want people to spend money on my courses if I'm not the teacher for them, Because I also think there's a lot of art teachers who are just talented and aren't necessarily good teachers. Like there's many art courses that I've tried when I was like more of a beginner, like many years ago, where I felt so confused because the teacher would assume that I had like some sort of talent that I didn't have. Like the teacher couldn't really understand that if you're a beginner, like you really need guidance. Like, no, like I want a worksheet with just shapes because, yeah, shapes are easy, but I still want the practice. So that is why in the Beginners Toolkit and the Intro to Drawing stuff, I talk a lot about shapes, because I'm just like, yeah, it's obvious to a lot of talented artists, but if you're a beginner artist, that stuff isn't that obvious. Like, you want someone to show you, like, here are the shapes, explore them, have fun with them, because it's not a given. I'm a heavyweight mixed media paper person, and I destroy my micro and fine liners too, but I did get a good texture. Yeah, we love a good texture. Paper texture is nice. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that most digital artists, they try to make their work look most digital artists try to make their work look traditional, and I'm doing that right now, right? Like, I'm using brushes that mimic all this texture because it feels like you want to hold it, Jerome, when do you think you'll start a family and get married? Well, that's a serious question. When the time is right. I think that's ultimately when it happens. It happens. I am a little bit older, and I am hopefully on the path there, but the challenge really is, like, not to get like into political talk here, but the cost of living is so high that making money has become like a kind of a bigger focus than I wanted it to be. Like, if I could just survive on a lower income, I would, but ultimately where I live and where I want to live, things aren't cheap. So if I want to live here, I kind of have to learn how to survive here. That's that. Have to put up with some of the downsides of that, It comes with the territory. But I also, I'm realizing that I've spent so much time complaining about that stuff with my friends. I don't complain about it online because I think that's not not my topic of expertise, right? Like I don't know enough about. Well, I know quite a bit, but I'm not as specialized in the economy and politics. But I talk a lot about it with friends, and at some point, it's just like, well, you kind of just have to make a decision whether or not you're going to live in an area where it's expensive and just like learn how to make more money, or move, because those are your two options, really. There aren't that many options when it comes to that stuff. So that's like the family and like settling down side of things. It's 11 p.m. here. I just caught up the light before heading to bed. Glad I did, but said I got to tap out early so I can get up early tomorrow. Have a good night. Yes, thank you so much for stopping by, Christine. Appreciate ya. Thank you for sharing about your process. That means a lot. I'm happy that you found a process that works for you, that is like fun. Thank you for drawing with me. You were here quite a bit, and I hope you enjoyed it. Don't have to feel pressure to be here the whole time, you know. A drawing session can be 20 minutes. Like, this is important to note, is that drawing sessions don't have to be long. They can be short. Is this brush smaller than I want? Oh no, I'm just not pressing hard enough. Okay, here we go. I guess I just forgot how this brush worked for a second. Yeah. I hope you guys are drawing along. If you're looking for something to draw, check out the 54 free drawing exercises that are linked below, like I mentioned earlier. Designed specifically for beginners, but also remember that ultimately we also want to be making personal pieces. So, you know, don't forget to make art that you care about. And do the drawing exercises from a place of love and joy. That's the biggest challenge. That's challenge number one. The meta challenge is, how do I do drawing exercises and then try to enjoy them at the same time? And that's not something that comes naturally to most people, right? If you're challenging yourself, sometimes that can be frustrating. But overall, you want it to be some sort of joy in it. Part of me is like, do I need to add more details here? There's like a temptation in my mind to like go in and add a bunch of details with like. But this is it? I'm gonna think about it for a second here. Can I have another layer? Okay. I think 9 layers is my limit on this canvas. For anyone who hasn't used Procreate, depending on the resolution of the canvas, you get a set limited amount of layers because it's gonna like run out of RAM, basically. Like it's gonna run out of space. So you have to like be careful with how many layers you work with. The thing is, like, I want to work at a higher DPI because I want to be able to print these at larger scales if I ever want to, you know. Because the dream is to like have an art book. That would be a dream come true. Which is a big part of why, big part of why I made the inner artist course was so that I could use it for myself. Like I literally listened to it back because like when you edit it, you listen to it back, and I had to do all the exercises myself as well. In that process, a big part of why I did that is because I wanted to come up with a project that would be worth getting printed at some point. You know, because like if you're going to put an art book together, or you're going to put like a project together, you want to know that you're like investing your time in something that you actually care about. So I made that course partially to find a project that I could like eventually get printed. Just even if it was just like a couple of books for myself, like it's not necessarily to sell. But I'm hoping that this project becomes the project that I decide to get printed. But I'm also trying to be careful not to put that pressure, like too much pressure on it. But ultimately, that's the goal I have with this. Yes, like if I choose a spouse who's fine with budget-friendly life, yeah, and that's true. But the problem, yeah, it also really depends on where you live, right? So I live in Toronto, or like right now it's like slightly on the outskirts of Toronto, but ultimately I want to live in Toronto, and just the cost of living just for housing is expensive. So it's like even if you're down for like a low-key lifestyle, if housing is expensive, it's hard. But yeah, I'm not gonna go too much into that because I'm not gonna sit here and complain about how expensive everything is. Like it's not what I want to talk about really. But yeah, like there are solutions, and I just have to keep reminding myself that that's not what my mind should be on. I'm here, like my existence is, I'll get my life fulfillment from teaching people, helping people like draw more, and then make art. Those are the two things that I'm going to be focused on, and that's all I need to worry about. There's part of me that wants to go in here and like, can I get another layer, please? Oh, maximum 9. Yeah, see, that's what I thought. I thought that was 9 was the max here. Okay. Part of me wonders if I can like, no. Is it? Part of me is time to put in a couple of highlights, but I also like, I'm trying to figure out the aesthetic of this project. Like, where do I add more highlights? Do I add more details? All that. Those are the questions I'm kind of grappling with here. Yeah, I think this is. Yeah, cool red tones. This turned out more red than I initially intended, but that I think it works well. I am happy with this. I like the roughness here. Maybe I should go in here. So have this red tone. Can I also do like a white drawing over top here? Maybe a little bit more detail lines here and there. Part of me is like, is that necessary? Like, am I just trying to add details for detail's sake, or am I doing this because I actually want to enjoy the practice of it? Yeah, it doesn't need it. That's surprising. Thought it needed it, but I think that's actually good. Here we go. I actually think I'm going to call it a day here. I think I'm quite good. I think this is a good ending point, because I do think the colors might be done here. I think I'm going to pull this into Photoshop later and then like adjust the colors and then do a print test at home and then see if I want to add more details. But thank you guys so much for hanging out. If you are interested in drawing with me, check out the courses, the Absolutely Everything bundle that's linked below. In the Absolutely Everything bundle, you'll get the Inner Artist course, where we focus on developing your personal project and dealing with like perfectionism and like finding your personal voice, because I think that is, to me, that's the most important part of being an artist. Now, if you are a beginner artist, also check out like the Beginners Toolkit, the fundamentals things that I also have comes with the Absolutely Everything bundle. All this stuff is linked below. Check it out if you're interested in drawing with me, but also check out the free stuff. I also have the free 54 drawing exercises. Make sure that I'm the right teacher for you before you like start spend a bunch of money. Thank you so much for drawing with me. Thank you for all the very kind comments. It does mean the world to me. Like, when I lay down in bed, I do think about these things. I screenshot so many comments, and I have a folder on my phone for bad days. I just like go back and I read them, and it makes my life feel so much more fulfilling. So thank you for inviting me into your creative journey. It is not lost on me how many people spend their time, their creative time with me. I will never take that for granted. It's one of the main things that I meditate on to make my life more fulfilling, is the fact that you guys are spending time drawing with me. So thank you so much. It means the world to me. Love you. I appreciate you. See you guys around. And remember to keep drawing and lean into the joy of drawing. Ultimately, that's the main thing that matters. You'll improve the more you enjoy it. So appreciate y'all. See you guys in the next time. Bye. I'm going to walk over there and turn it off now.